Okay, so if you've been following the news around childcare costs, I mean, it often feels like this problem that just can't be solved, right? A burden getting heavier.
It really does. Seems intractable sometimes.
But what if the state didn't just, tweak things a bit? What if
Hmm.
they just made the cost disappear?
Hmm.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into how New Mexico managed to become the first state offering universal free childcare. And that's for every family. Income doesn't matter. Starts November 1, 2025.
It's a massive shift, truly historic.
It really is. And,
Yeah.
the immediate question for anyone watching this space is,
Yeah.
okay, how? How did they actually pull that off?
That's exactly the core question. And look, this isn't just some local interest story out of the Southwest. It's potentially a national blueprint. It could change how we think about childcare everywhere.
Right.
So for you listening, maybe you're a parent, maybe you're thinking about starting a family, or maybe you're just interested in, smart policy that works.
Yeah.
Understanding New Mexico's playbook here gives you some real insight. We're going to unpack the specific policy levers they pulled, the money side of it, and some of those maybe surprising economic effects. It's not just what happened, but the really clever how behind it all.
Hey, let's zoom right in on that. The immediate impact. November 1st, 2025. Universal. Free. Truly, for every family. No income caps. What does no cost actually mean for, like, a regular family's budget?
Yeah.
Because the numbers in our sources, they're pretty eye-popping.
Oh, they really are. The sources we looked at estimate families in New Mexico saving, on average, nearly $12,000 per child annually.
$12,000. Wow.
It's a staggering amount. And think about it. This isn't just, pocket money. It fundamentally changes the financial picture for so many families.
How so?
Well, imagine going from that cycle of, paycheck goes in, huge chunk immediately goes out for childcare, maybe before you can even think about saving.
Yeah, it vanishes.
Exactly. To suddenly having that money available, you can start building equity, maybe save for a down payment, invest in your kid's future education, whatever it might be. So the real insight here, I think, is that it's not just about covering an expense today. It's about enabling potentially generational financial progress.
That's a really powerful way to put it. Not just an expense removed, but like a future opened up. Which, of course, makes me think, how did they get there? I mean, something this big doesn't just happen overnight, does it?
No, you're absolutely right to ask that. It's crucial to see this wasn't some sudden lightning strike. It's really the peak of a strategic multi-year climb.
Okay.
New Mexico had already put down some serious groundwork. Like back in 2022, they expanded childcare assistance pretty significantly, covered families earning up to 400% of the federal poverty level.
400%. What does that mean in real terms?
Well, for a family of four, that could be an income up around $120,000 a year, roughly. So a lot of families were already getting help with subsidies.
Right, so they built on something existing.
Exactly. But this latest step, the universal piece, it just ensures that absolutely no parent, no matter their income, gets left out. It really speaks to, sustained progressive reform, building carefully, step by step.
So we've got universal free childcare,
Yeah.
huge. But as you said, for other states looking at this, the burning question is how.
Yeah.
It wasn't overnight. What were those sort of foundational pillars New Mexico put in place?
Yeah, and this is where the strategy gets really interesting. Our sources point to basically four key reasons, all working together, that made this possible for New Mexico.
Okay, let's break those down. What's the first one?
The first, and you could argue it's the bedrock, is a constitutional amendment. Voters passed it in 2022.
An amendment. Wow.
Yeah. It actually enshrines a right to early childhood education directly into the state constitution.
Right, not just like a program goal.
Right. Exactly. Think about the power of that. It takes early learning from being, a policy priority that can change with politics to being a fundamental legally protected right for kids. That's a serious legal foundation. Much harder to undo down the road.
That signals a really long-term commitment, not just a temporary program. Okay, so you have the right, but rights cost money. Funding's always the next big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did they tackle that?
It absolutely is. And that brings us to the second pillar, a really innovative funding stream. New Mexico managed to secure $150 million annually, and it comes directly from their Land Grant Permanent Fund.
The Land Grant Permanent Fund. Explain that a bit. Is that like a state savings account?
Sort of, yeah. Think of
Okay.
it like a state endowment, often built up over time from things like historical land deals or maybe natural resource money, and it's specifically earmarked to support public education.
Oh,
The genius part here is that this funding isn't dependent on, say, the usual yearly budget fights in the legislature or ups and downs in general tax revenue.
so it's stable, predictable.
Incredibly stable and consistent. That's gold for a program this big. It provides that financial bedrock that, frankly, most states really struggle to find for major initiatives like this.
That is a game changer for just keeping the thing going, that predictability. Okay, so you've got the right, you've got dedicated money, but you still need the actual child care centers, the people, the quality. What about the workforce side? What did the sources say there?
Yeah, you've nailed a critical piece. Pillar number 3 is all about robust workforce support. Because, it's great to say childcare is a right, it's great to fund it, but you need skilled, dedicated people providing that care.
Of course.
So New Mexico really focused on this. They significantly boosted wages and improved working conditions for childcare professionals.
Which is often a low-paid sector, right? High turnover.
Exactly. So this isn't just like a nice bonus. It's essential if you want quality and enough available spots. By making childcare a better, more sustainable career.
You attract and keep good people.
Precisely. You reduce that churn that plagues the industry, and you ultimately make sure there are enough high-quality places for all the kids who now have access. It's a whole system view that people doing the work are just as vital as the policy itself.
That makes complete sense. The whole thing falls apart without a stable, well-paid workforce. Okay, so, right, funding, workforce, but what about the providers themselves? The centers. How did New Mexico make sure they could actually deliver quality care without going broke under the new system? What was the last piece?
The fourth piece, and it's incredibly practical, was about totally rethinking how the subsidies actually work.
How so?
Well, for a long time, many states used these kind of outdated federal formulas. They paid providers a flat rate per child, often way too low. Providers were struggling just to cover rent and basic supplies, let alone invest in making things better.
Right, I've heard about that, squeezing the providers.
Totally. So New Mexico just flipped that. They moved to a model based on the true costs of care.
It's true cost.
Yeah. What does it actually cost to run a high-quality, safe, stimulating program? They compensate providers based on that reality, not some arbitrary low number.
Right.
And that lets providers invest. Better facilities, better learning materials, and crucially, linking back to the last point, better pay for their staff.
It all connects.
It really does. So you take all four, the constitutional right, stable funding, supporting the workforce, and paying the true cost to providers, and you see how they've kind of engineered this really solid, sustainable system for universal care.
That's a really comprehensive strategy, and obviously great for families. But, the sources we read really emphasize something broader. This isn't just being seen as a social program. It's being talked about as like a smart economic development play. Can you unpack that a bit? How does free childcare actually boost the wider economy?
Oh, absolutely. The economic angle is huge, and it works on multiple levels. One of the most immediate things you see is a big jump in workforce participation, especially for mothers.
Because the cost barrier is gone.
Exactly. For decades, that huge cost of childcare has been this massive disincentive. It forces parents, mostly women historically, to maybe work fewer hours or pass up a promotion or sometimes leave the workforce entirely for years. This policy just removes that giant financial obstacle. It basically unlocks a whole segment of the workforce. That's a direct boost to the state's economy, to its GDP. It's not just helping family budgets, it's growing the economic pie.
So it directly empowers more parents, especially women, to work and earn. That's clear. Are there other economic benefits, maybe for employers or even thinking longer term for the kids themselves?
Definitely. Employers benefit directly, too. They get a more stable, more reliable pool of workers. Less absenteeism, maybe less turnover, better productivity overall.
Makes sense.
But the long-term payoffs are potentially even bigger. We know that high-quality early childhood education, which this policy helps guarantee for more kids, is just a fantastic investment.
How so? What kind of returns?
Well, study after study shows it leads to better results in school later on, higher lifetime earnings for those kids, even things like lower crime rates. Our sources specifically mention researchers are already seeing evidence that this initiative is helping lift New Mexico families out of poverty.
Wow, already?
Yeah, which means healthier communities, more economic stability across the board, potentially less need for other kinds of social safety net programs down the road. So you see, it's framed as this really smart, strategic investment in people, in human capital.
Yeah.
Far more than just a handout.
Okay, with that kind of holistic approach and these early positive signs, it's really no wonder New Mexico is being called a model for the nation. But realistically, how easy is this for other states to copy? What's the biggest challenge or maybe the most replicable part?
That really is the key question everyone's asking. And yes, other states are watching this New Mexico experiment, you could call it, very, very closely.
Right.
Now, that constitutional amendment we talked about, that's a pretty high bar. Amending a state constitution takes a certain political climate, a voter consensus. That's not easy everywhere.
Right, that seems unique.
It is somewhat unique. However, the idea of finding dedicated funding, maybe through a different kind of mechanism, maybe tweaking existing state funds or endowments, that's definitely sparking conversations elsewhere. And remember, this is all happening while there are ongoing, albeit slow, conversations at the federal level about boosting childcare funding nationally. So New Mexico isn't just doing its own thing in isolation. It's providing this real-world proof of concept, showing what's possible when a state decides to lead, even if federal action is lagging.
It really feels like it changes the whole conversation about what childcare is, doesn't it? Moving it from being seen as just a private family issue to something bigger. How significant is that shift in thinking?
Oh, it's a fundamental paradigm shift, absolutely monumental. For so long, childcare has been treated primarily as a private burden. It's your family's problem to solve, almost seen as a luxury expense sometimes, not a core need.
Yeah, that framing is common.
New Mexico is explicitly saying, no, this is a public good. It's essential infrastructure for our state, like roads or schools are. It's critical for families and for our economy to function well.
Public good. Like infrastructure.
Exactly. And that reframing is incredibly powerful. It changes the whole debate from just who pays to why do we all benefit when this is accessible. It forces us to rethink what services are truly foundational for a society to thrive. And honestly, that conversation could eventually go way beyond just childcare.
So wrapping up our deep dive today, we've really unpacked how New Mexico achieved something quite remarkable. We looked beyond the headline to see how that combination of a constitutional right, the clever funding, supporting the actual workers, and paying the true cost of care.
A strategic, multi-pronged approach.
Right. And understanding it not just as relief for families, which is huge, but also as this really potent economic development strategy. It's changing lives, yes, but also boosting the whole state.
Absolutely. New Mexico is setting a precedent here, redefining childcare in a modern economy, and it really does challenge all of us, doesn't it? It makes you think. If childcare, which felt like such a private struggle for so long, can be reframed as a public good that lifts everyone, well, what other challenges, what other services or needs that maybe you face, currently seen as just an individual burden? What else might your community or your state start to view as essential public infrastructure down the line?
A fundamental question for sure.
How do we collectively build a society that truly supports everyone to thrive? It's definitely something worth